Hey you guys, today I'm going to show you how to make my absolutely incredible fall apart fork tender red wine braised pot roast over creamy cheesy grits. This is sheer heaven. If you are a beef lover, you've got to try to make this, especially for your husband or your dad or anybody for Father's Day. They will absolutely love it. So let's get into it and I'll show you how to make them. Okay, you guys, if you've never seen one of these, this is an electric skillet. It's very old-fashioned. My mom has used one for years, and I now use one. I've used it for years, and the reason is it is absolutely perfect for making braised meats. It really, really braises them to where they are fork tender, and I have tried every other method, and I personally think this one is the best. However, I'm not going to show it in the video, but if you want to use something else like a crock pot, an instant pot, a Dutch oven, I do have instructions for that in the recipe itself on my blog, so just check that out. This method is what I'm showing you today, however, in the video. So I'm going to salt and pepper both sides of my chuck roast. This is a beef chuck roast, and get it into my electric skillet, and this is over a pretty high heat. I think it's at like 375, and there's a little bit of olive oil in there, and I'm just going to let this sear on both sides. So through the magic of video, we can flip this over now. It's been a few minutes, and this looks absolutely perfect. This is what we want, nice and brown. And to this, I'm going to add 3 garlic cloves that have been peeled but are left whole, and 2 sprigs each of rosemary and fresh thyme. And I'm putting those on top because I don't want them to burn in the high heat right now. And now comes the red wine. I'm using an entire regular size bottle. I think it's like 750 milliliters of red wine. This happens to be Cabernet Sauvignon. You can also use Merlot or any other dry red wine. This is just a cheap bottle of wine I got from my local Lidl. I think it was like $10 or something. So you don't need to go crazy on expensive wine here. And I'm also adding an entire box of beef stock or beef broth. But I have a reserved box of beef broth just in case the liquids need to be replenished a little bit halfway through cooking. So we're going to bring this back to a boil, and then we're going to reduce it to about 200 degrees. So very, very low, and cover it and basically set it and forget it. Walk away for at least 2 hours, and then we'll come back and check it in 2 hours. Okay, it's been 2 hours, so let's see how it's going. And it definitely has been cooking away, but it is nowhere near being done. And you can see that just by the texture here of the meat. It's not falling apart. It's still rather tough. So we're gonna flip it over and put the lid back on and walk away again. Okay, it's been another hour, so I'm just checking on this one more time. And it still doesn't look ready yet. I can already tell just by the look of it that it's not ready yet. It doesn't have that deep mahogany color that I'm going for. And I can tell just by flipping it over that it doesn't fall apart as easily. It's starting to get there, but not quite yet. At this point, if you're adding any veggies, if you want to add veggies, do it now at this point at the 3-hour mark. If not, just put the lid back on, let it go for another hour while we make our cheese grits. Okay, grits are super simple to make, and cheese grits are just as simple. I am adding salt and pepper to rapidly boiling chicken stock, and I'm going to whisk away while I add in my corn grits. I have a combination of yellow and white. You can just use one or the other or both. It doesn't matter. And we just continue to whisk this for a good couple of minutes at first so they won't be lumpy. And unfortunately, grits are not one of those meals or dishes where you can just walk away for an hour. You will have to come back and stir this frequently, not like every 2 minutes or something, but I would say every 5 to 7 minutes, come back and stir this in the 30-minute interval. So we're going to start this with 30 minutes with the lid on at a low simmer, and I'll see you back in 30 minutes. Okay, so it's been 30 minutes. Let's take the lid off. I have whisked this every 5 to 7 minutes, like I said, just to keep it from burning or sticking on the bottom. And it's nice and thick, but I want to add some half and half at this point. You could also add whole milk or heavy cream, whichever way you want to go, or a combination of both, because half and half really is like a combination of whole milk and heavy cream. So we'll whisk that in, and then we'll put the top back on and let it go for another 20 minutes or so. We'll come back at 20 minutes and see how it's doing. And in the meantime, we'll go ahead and check our beef. This is looking absolutely fabulous. You can tell that it's super tender, fall apart. It's going to be actually hard to get it out of the pan, but it's not quite done yet, at least for the liquid part. So what I'm going to do right now is just take out these sprigs, the rosemary and thyme. They've done their job. I'm going to leave the garlic cloves in there. They're very soft now at this point, and what will happen is they'll just basically get they'll melt into the gravy. So get all those sprigs out of there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the lid back on. I'm going to bump this heat up to about 375 or so, because I do want to reduce this liquid a little bit more before I start making the gravy. So I will see you back here. I know it's a lot of waiting around, but it's not a lot of hands-on time. I'll see you back here in another like 20 minutes or so. In the meantime, though, I'm checking on the grits because these should be done. They look so creamy, perfect. So now the only thing that's left to do is add in the cheese. I'm using cheddar cheese. You could probably use another kind of cheese, jalapeno jack maybe. That would be super good. And then all we have to do is whisk in this cheese. It'll melt pretty much simultaneously, and we can cut off the heat. And these will tighten up. They'll get a little firmer. By the time we're ready to serve them, we can just put the lid on and walk away while we go back to the beef. But before we go back to the beef, let's make a slurry, a cornstarch slurry. This is just cornstarch. It's going in a mason jar. I'm adding to that some very cold water. This is how my mom always made gravy growing up. And when she made it with flour, but when I became celiac, she switched to cornstarch for me, and it worked perfectly fine, and I've been doing it this way ever since. So I just mix this up, shake it up really well so there are no lumps, and now we'll go ahead and check on the beef and get to that gravy. Yes, this is exactly what we want to see. See how this beef is almost like a mahogany color. You may not be able to see it from your view, but it's totally like deep, dark mahogany color. And look at this, how it's falling apart. I told you it would be harder to get out of the pan with it being so tender. But do your best, get all those chunks out of there too. And we'll leave in the little bits that we can't get up, as well as those garlic cloves, which will be just smashed up in the gravy. And the liquid is perfectly reduced now. Check this beef out, you guys. It is insanely good. So now we've got our little shaker bottle of the cornstarch slurry, and we'll pour that in while we're whisking away. You may need to add a little more water if it's too thick for you, or a little more cornstarch slurry if it's too thin for you. You kind of have to judge for yourself, because nobody is going to have the exact equal amount of liquid left. And this is looking pretty darn good to me, so I'm going to leave it right where it's at. No more liquid, no more cornstarch. I let it go for about a minute just while I whisked it to thicken up, and it looks perfectly thick to me. So we are done. We've got all our components, and we are ready to serve this up. I'm sure the meat lovers, beef lovers in your family are going to go crazy over this beef. It is exactly what I was talking about. It's deep, dark mahogany in color, and that just adds a ton of flavor to this. Look at how fork tender it just falls apart. You don't need a knife to cut this ever. And the cheese grits, oh my gosh, they are insanely good. So I hope you guys get a chance to try this and make it for the dads in your life. Enjoy.